right, hey everybody, another Thursday, another Webflow SEO live stream, and we're going to be chatting about something very, very interesting and dear to my heart today. And it's a word that I've been using for ever since I remember I joined the community. So it's like, I don't know, 6, 8, or even more months ago. But suddenly this kind of movement became more and more obvious. So today we will be talking with Glenn from TheFlow. And hey, Glenn, let's say hi to everybody.
Hi, everybody. Pleasure to be here. I'm looking forward to this.
Yes. And for those who don't know, let's do a quick intro about Glenn, because he's I think everybody knows you, but you never know. Maybe there's somebody. So Glenn your agency is solo, or how does the agency part, like TheFlow, how does that work? Like, because on your bio link, there's a lot of cool stuff there, but like, can you tell us a little bit about that part?
Yeah, so it was originally 3 of us, and we were doing more agency style kind of work and designer, developer, etc. But I wanted to take a change of direction, so I kept the name, but it's now really me solo, and I'm doing much more partnerships with people, loose partnerships and other, as opposed to actually a formal agency arrangement. But I kind of didn't want to drop the agency bit, because that's how people knew me, so I kind of got stuck with it. But maybe one day I'll turn it to something else.
Okay, and then Glenn is also responsible for NoCode Kids. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Because this is sounds like a very interesting avenue to put yourself towards, and a very interesting goal to have in life, like in general, to teach kids or teenagers probably more about, right?
Yeah, for now, definitely. So this one, again, this is myself and Max Haining, and we were chatting about this and how we wish we'd have learnt no code at school. That's basically how the conversation started. And we thought, well, Max is doing 100 days of no code. I'm sure everybody knows that. And I was doing a lot of client work and coaching and so on. And we said, well, why can't we start something? Let's have a go. And we did this trial with 2 schools, which went down really, really well. The kids really enjoyed it. And they just got it, I think that's the thing that you have to realize, is that all our kids were born with technology around them. They're so familiar with it that it's easy to teach them this kind of stuff. So we put the program together, put it in front of this 2 cohorts, and they lapped it up. So it's got a really promising future. I think that we're definitely going to see no code in schools eventually, like on the curriculum. But for now, we've just got to kind of get in there any way we can. So I know of a few of us that are all trying to get in. I'm calling it kind of getting in through the back door, like slipping into sessions at school where they're not held down by the curriculum. They can actually allow external people in to pass on knowledge. But it's going really well, and we've got some big plans for that in the future.
All right, that sounds like everything you would want to have next to your client work and next to your agency and next to your other stuff that we're going to talk about soon. But this incentive, I remember when I heard about it, was actually, yeah, you would want to learn that in school. It would be, wow, a game changer, understanding that you can do certain things quite not that hardly, especially when, kids now are way much more eager to watch a YouTube video and learn it right now, right here. It sounds like a very, very cool incentive to have, and a cool project to kind of maintain.
Yeah, the thing is as you say, our kids, I've got a 14-year-old daughter, and she will consume vast amounts of information in a day. When I say information, a lot of it's probably rubbish, but it just all goes in. It's like they're a machine, they're sponges. So trying to get to the point where our kids are sort of slightly less consumerist and more creative, I think that's one of our big angles here, is how can we get them designing and building things because it's fun, and it could even have a practical application in their lives as well, whether it's to help with what they're studying, or a career path, or just for the fun of it, or possibly even to make money. There's so many reasons why they might want to do it, but just this idea of let's get them creating. Let's stop with this just mass consumerism of content, especially with TikTok and Reels and things. So yeah, that's part of the reason for doing it. But once they get into it, they're like, oh, okay, now I get this. This is cool. I can do this. So yeah, it's good.
That's awesome to hear. I really love this. Let's jump to next thing on your list. So TheFlow is your solo practice, as you said, as in you help guys build Webflow sites and Shopify stores and NoCode. So that whole Shopify and Webflow thing is not a common combo to have, but can you tell us a little bit about your career, maybe, so we can get where this came from? Because it's clearly embedded in your past experiences, which, based on what we had in the show notes, I can say there's like a very interesting migration from kind of different professions a little bit, but at the same time in the same type of projects, but maybe different kind of jobs that you did. So can you kind of tell us a little bit about yourself, like how this came to be and how you found Webflow and why Shopify is still on your on your landing page and all that kind of a little bit, share about yourself and introduce to your life before Webflow and how you found it and after Webflow?
I'll give you the brief version. I've been doing this a while, so I'll definitely just summarize this. But I started out doing user-centered design, usability, user requirements analysis, lots of human factors type work in my early career. And it was before the web was really taking off, so it was early days. I was always interested in the technology. I loved the tech and trying to blend the user stuff with the tech was always the big challenge for me, always the big interest for me. So I learned everything that we all kind of have to learn, the basics of web design and structure and information architecture and UX, UI, usability. It just goes on and on, right? You learn all of that, at least to a degree. And we were talking before, weren't we, about how maybe we should know more. It would be handy if we knew more, but we don't necessarily do that. Maybe we'll come on to that as a topic. But the web design side started for me a long time ago, and I was doing it all by hand. So I kind of had to code in the early stages. So I was deep in the weeds with HTML, CSS, JavaScript out of necessity. At the time, Dreamweaver kind of came along and made light of that, which was so cool. And that was my first experience of a visual tool taking over from having to code. And I just thought, this is amazing. Like, I can't believe that you can just drag and drop things and it spits out the code. So that was my first experience, like way back when. So I got the bug. And then I strayed into web development because clients then, talking early noughties now, were saying, I want to hook up my database somehow. I need all this information that I've got on the website. How am I going to get that onto the website? So again, I ended up coding. I was using a variety of different databases and using different languages. My favorite one at the time was Ruby on Rails, still awesome today. But that was a real pleasure to use. But I was just not very good at it. I was a pretty average coder, and I sat with really good coders, as many of us have. And when you watch a proper coder coding, you think, okay, I can't do that. That's not the way my mind thinks, right? So that got me thinking, okay, I'm not going to be able to just do a career in this. I can get by, but I need to do something else. So I then really got into digital marketing, digital advertising, all the usual stuff, email marketing, paid ads, affiliate marketing. I got really deep into that and had a job for about 6 years helping a company in the UK grow as a result of using all of this technology, just as it was massively taking off. So that was just really fun, being on that kind of roller coaster with digital marketing. And that was also an e-commerce outfit. So it was selling calendars. So it was like the largest calendar seller in Europe. I think it shifted something like 4 million calendars through the warehouse or something. So it wasn't small, this is a fairly big outfit. And that was just fun, just learning the technology that was coming out, applying it in real time, seeing sales increase as a result of applying best practices and decent technology and SEO and all the rest of it. So again, that was a really good stepping stone. But then when I left employment to set up this agency as a digital marketing and e-commerce agency, which is why you see Shopify and everything still on there, I was only doing that for about a year, and then NoCode just took off. It just suddenly took off. I went over to NoCode Conf 2019 to Webflow in San Francisco, and just being in that room with all those people was just the light bulb moment. And I think a lot of people said that at the time and since, that it just sparked something in us all, and that was it. We all left there totally high on life and wanting to just get stuck in. So that's exactly what I did. I kind of parked e-commerce stuff to one side, but still entertained doing client projects, which I subsequently did do, but really focused on learning as much no-code as possible. Webflow was a key part of that, always a key part of that from the beginning. We were probably one of the first Webflow agencies in the UK at the time. And there was a growing hunger for it, just because it was getting to be such a well-known product, good at what it did, and being an enjoyable product to use, especially for those clients who had bad experiences with WordPress. So, all the stories we've heard before. So we were experiencing that. And with the learning of no-code and being able to do real client projects with these tools, so we're talking, the likes of Integromat at the time, which then became Make, Zapier, obviously, Airtable, obviously Webflow, and any number of other tools in the mix along the way. Dozens of them. You're learning constantly and just soaking up, and that sort of led me to where I am today. So the client work is still going on. That's definitely part of my remit, but I'm doing more and more projects which are kind of driven, I guess, from a different place, like a need to pass on what I've learned, I guess, to use a Jedi term. Just sharing this stuff with anybody who needs it, because I really believe that it can change your life. It's changed mine. It's changed a lot of other people's lives that I know, and I'm sure you're the same. And it's like, well, how can I help with other people to get there? Maybe a bit quicker than I did. How can I speed that up? So that's where I am right now. NoCode Kids is part of that. The new initiative that I launched, a week ago, just about, maybe a bit more, is all about learning how to build web apps in Webflow, which we can talk about. I'd love to talk about. It's where the DEVsigner term really hooked me when we were chatting on Twitter, because I saw that and I thought, yes, that's it. That's the term that I was after, because we'll go into it anyway. But that's where I'm sitting right now, is how can I help all of these Webflow website designers become Webflow website developers. And I think that's the bit that we're going to talk about most today, right?
Oh yeah, that's an amazing segue into us actually diving into the topic. Before we do, though, I have to say hello to those watching us now. So hey, Aruna, and hey, Omkar. And Omkar, I know, joined your initiative, and I'm 200% sure he's part of the founding team. So Omkar, if you have any questions or something, drop it in here. But yeah, I'm pretty sure I know that Omkar is one of your founding team members for that initiative, which is, let's not waste any time and let's jump into what that initiative is. I have something about it here prepared. So you want to tell us a little bit about it? I added your mission and your 3 C's and about the founding members, and also a quick reminder, because we're not going to touch it again. Glenn also is working together with other people on a NoCode SaaS podcast. So if you want to follow that, I already followed, and I suggest you guys do the same. There's 9 episodes already, so it should be fun. But yeah, so the initiative. So the big launch happened 10 days ago, something along those lines, almost 2 weeks ago. So tell us a little bit about what you guys are doing and what's the goal, and how this whole thing is, what's the idea, and where they can join, and all the good stuff.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for giving me this platform. But I think it's important to discuss why I'm doing this more than anything else. I think that's the key thing here. Hi to Omkar. Hi Dan. Hi. Thanks for joining. And definitely anybody that wants to join the founding members group, there are definitely spaces. We've got people queued up wanting to come in. We're letting people in bit by bit. So yeah, we'll go into it. So basically, where this came about was that I'm seeing more and more Webflow designers really get stuck in with the more advanced features in Webflow. So we're talking collections, memberships, logic, e-commerce. These are great tools in Webflow. I'll never take that away from it. But some people will say they only go so far. They don't go far enough. And if you're going to build something more advanced than those tools can give you feature-wise, then you're going to get stuck. You're going to literally just hit a dead end. So what made me think about this is that when I was coding back in the day, I didn't have those restrictions. My only restrictions were whether I could learn enough code to actually get the thing to do what it needed to do. That was it. That was the only restriction, was like my level of competence, intelligence, dedication, whatever. Whereas today, in no-code land, we don't feel like we've got that full 100% level of flexibility. With design, we do. In Webflow, we're used to that 100% flexibility. It's something that, one of the reasons why we use Webflow in the first place. And then you go to build something with a bit more functionality, and you have that feel of lack. So we've seen tools starting to spring up now that are looking to support people on the next stage of that journey, right? So we've got things like, as I say, collections and memberships perhaps, and logic under our belts. We know a certain level of that. And then it's like, well, then what? Where do I go from here? And even learning things like logic, that I've seen people posting about how do they use the HTTP module in there? How does that actually work? What can I really do with this? And I just thought there's something missing here. There's a bit of education missing here to actually take people from using Webflow core, I think I'll call it, and being able to add on to that, again, without relying on third parties. So a third-party system like, let's say JetBoost, for example. Chris and team, brilliant product. Anybody that's used it will be testament to that. Fantastic product. And it will, again, take you so far. It gives you more than Webflow gives you. But again, another dead end. You've got FinSuite attributes, which is another level beyond, again, really advanced stuff you can do in there. And you get to a certain point, and then you feel like, okay, now how do I do this? I want to blend these two things together. I want to build this and this together, and I want it to look exactly how I want it to look, etc. So you get the point. And that's when the tool Wizzed kind of cropped up towards the end of last year. And those of us that were in the early beta program were kind of blown away by the new version 2, because it just enabled any of us to be able to learn these key concepts and then theoretically build pretty much any web app that you want to build on top of it, on top of Webflow. And I think that's something that we have to let sink in. It's like, oh, hang on a minute. I don't have to go to Bubble. I don't have to go to Builder. I don't have to try and cobble together something. I don't have to, learn a whole other platform. I've seen lots of people saying, I'm going to go and learn WeWeb. I'm going to go and learn Framer. I think that's a bit of a mistake. I think if you've been dedicating your time to Webflow and you're really into it and you enjoy it and you love it, stay with it, stick with it, and let's layer on top of that, because the FinSuite team have bought Wizzed from the original maker, Jonas. They've bought it and they are turning it into something really special. And this next version coming out, or this next iteration coming out, actually has Alex Iglesias, the CTO of FinSuite. It has a lot more of his input in that as well, which will take it again to another level. So there's a lot going on at the moment, a lot in flux, which we should all be on top of and aware of and capitalize on for our own benefits. So this is what I'm kind of advocating, basically, to get back to the point, is what will this tool, or tools like this, if Wiz isn't your bag, but will tools like this transform you from one kind of Webflow user to another kind of Webflow user, and that's this sort of, I guess, a sliding scale that we need to talk about. And at what point do you stop being a designer, and what point are you now a Webflow developer? There are a lot of people that will call themselves Webflow developers already because they use collections and they use the other features. Obviously that's totally cool. But if you're really going to develop web apps, I would say we need to just take that a stage further. So that's what I'm setting out to do with this initiative.
And how can people join this? Is it still a private invite via DMs, or is there anything we can share with the team, with everybody who's watching this? Or is this how the whole process now and the founding this program of elevating your skills to the next level and becoming, becoming more of a developer? Like, how does that setup looks now? What's the CTA, man?
So it's early stages. This is literally the first couple of weeks. So what I've been doing is relatively slowly inviting people in to DM me first. We'll have a conversation, see if it's the right fit. I certainly don't want people to sign up, waste their time, spend their money if it's not going to be something that works for them. I really, really want this to be a group of people that can all learn together, share together, and really get more out of it than just learning a tool. So I've got these 3 C's that you mentioned. I've got the course aspect, which of course is teaching the core concepts, and the way I'm doing that is by building a real web app. And in this first version of the course, it's a digital product selling platform. So think of it like a replacement for Gumroad, and Stripe will be behind the scenes there, and you can use it for yourself, or you could potentially put other people's products on there. So it's just a really good starting web app to build. Lots of concepts. You get all the basic concepts and a few more advanced ones in there whilst we're at it. And it's just going to introduce you to some really powerful ideas and tools. So obviously Webflow, WISD is the key middleware, people call it, that bit that sits in the middle between Webflow and some kind of backend. And by backend, for people that aren't really au fait with sort of these kind of terminology, really we're just talking about some kind of database. But the one that I'm advocating is Xano, which is far more than just a database. It's a really, really powerful tool. And they call themselves the NoCode backend. They've chosen to call themselves that on Twitter. I think that's really interesting because it is more than just a set of tables and relationships. And it's really important to dig into why that's important in your stack. But these 3 products are the main 3 products working together, and we need to really get on top of each of those, like which bit's used for what, play to the strengths of each one of those tools, and then combine them together to great effect. People have questions like, will that scale, or how much is that going to cost? And these are worries that are worth having and then addressing and putting to bed. So I think once you get to the level of learning this kind of thing, you've gone beyond the basics now. You're going into intermediate territory with your Webflow life. You're going to learn some really, really big concepts, but it's not going to cost the earth, and it's pretty much infinitely scalable. So you just don't have to worry about it, because that's what I want to do. I don't want to introduce people to technologies that are going to paint them into another corner. A lot of people will use Airtable, for example, as a back end to a web app. And I kind of more or less fundamentally disagree with that for various reasons, but they're kind of technical reasons. And you'll see why in the course, I'll talk about that, why I believe that. But the main CTA is DMing me, saying you're interested if you want to join the founding members. Got a handful of people already. We're looking for between 20, maximum 30 people to do this first round. The price is $299, but that gets you not just the course, it gets you a set of clonables. So you get the full web app as basically download those clonables and install them. And then you've got a web app ready to launch if you want. But the idea is to rebuild that web app through the course. So you've got it to refer to. Now let's rebuild it, and you can compare your version to that version if you want to. And the third C is community. So the private group is, I'm calling it a private corner of my new community that I've launched. which is called Live the Flow Life. But the private community, private corner of the community, this group is isolated, and you will only know each other. You're not exposed to the rest of the community. But there's a possibility that some members might want to migrate over to the full community in time with no pressure at all. And I just think it's going to be a really great space for people to learn these concepts together, because learning on your own, especially when it's could be quite complex for some people, is sometimes not fun. It's quite infuriating. So let's do it together.
Those roadblocks are not fun when you bump into them and there's nobody to help you. I understand the whole 3C approach as in course, clonable, and the community, because without those three, there are roadblocks that we hit, and you're trying to avoid them, which is awesome. So if anybody wants to, just DM Glenn. He still has a few spots for the founding crew. And with that being said, with Dan's comment about agreed 100%, managed to build a sign-up login functionality pretty easy with Viz. I think everybody in the community are aware of Viz, and we have Emmanuel as the content kind of producer for that whole thing. So it's moving so fast, and the clonables was already a game changer when they showed up a few months back. So this is like a good spot to kind of do that. So if you're interested but still haven't touched that, and then Glenn is going to help you. And with this segue, let's jump into today's actual full-on topic, and let's chat about what we came here to chat about, which is DEVsigners. I don't know how we should say dev as in development, so DEVsigners, yeah, probably like that. So yeah, I will start by just saying, I came up with this term after realizing that kind of visual development on Webflow is something that a designer can do, but at the same time, those who say that are developers on Webflow are still quite, at least mediocre at design. So we live in this kind of multi-skilled world, and as the saying goes, jack of all trades, master of none, but usually better than master of one. We live in this kind of world where this becomes more and more normal to have multiple skills. And I think like Webflow as a platform itself, like as a visual development tool, brought us all, doesn't matter if you're in SEO, you have to understand a little bit of code, because by just learning Webflow, you become a little bit more of a developer than almost any other platform that can allow you to publish websites currently in the market. So it kind of all made sense that when you advertise, this is like a screenshot from, where was it? Here. This is a screenshot from one of the first ads Webflow had. And I don't know if you guys remember, but this was very, very funny when they were making fun of that developer that designers have to get, and he's the worst. So that whole designer idea came to me like as in, hey, we're all kind of mix and match of that, And that brings us to the most important component of the day, which is the designer slider. So some of us are a little more developers, some of us are a little more designers, some of us are completely in the middle, and but all of us kind of have some basic development and basic design skills, no matter how bad we are, either in all of it or just in one skill. So with that being said, why did you, Glenn, reacted and DM'd me and said, hey, I want to give you credit for this word, but I really love it. Like, what was that thing for you that kind of caught this word and you said, oh, this is the word I was looking for?
So I think it's because of the fact that even though it's a new word almost, it's like it's suggesting, as you've got here with the scale, that you don't have to see yourself as one or the other. Let's not think of these in binary terms. I'm either a designer or a developer. I think traditionally, I've worked on lots of teams where the designers and the developers are literally like two different breeds apart, and they find it difficult to work together because they each have their skills and their interests and their responsibilities, and they're quite comfortable with that. That's their comfort zone, but it causes issues. Like if I don't know how many people listening have experienced this, but you've designed a beautiful Webflow site and you kind of hand it over to a developer, and no disrespect to developers, but perhaps they're not so concerned about the design and about the integrity of that, or about your components or whatever it might be. And they kind of make a bit of a hash of it, and they get the thing working and they've done all kinds of things to it. But you as a designer then end up feeling quite disappointed by that, because you're like, I put all that hard work in, I was pixel perfect, and this has happened. So I think that friction that's always traditionally existed is something that we can address with this sliding scale. It's like, how can we get these two types of people traditionally talking to each other better, understanding each other better, working together on the same product in Webflow together. And we heard in the last conf from Webflow with DevLink and so on, how they're really looking to be able to do this, where each member of the team can actually work on their bit without interfering so much with each other's stuff. And it's a holy grail, that, and I think we will get there. But what I'd love to see is the web designer level up in terms of their skills, so that even if it's about having conversation with developers about APIs or webhooks or some JavaScript code that's been utilized or whatever it might be, wouldn't that be great if that conversation can be less sticky and more enjoyable and more respectful? So that's part of what I'm looking to do. And it's why DEVsigner really stuck out to me, because it's saying, okay, you're not a designer, you're not a developer, you're somewhere in between. And as you say on your slide, you could be anywhere, there. And that's good. That's a good thing.
Yeah, and while using Webflow, I just was drawing where we were talking about it. If you noticed, I added 2 more layers of that, let's say marketing and SEO. I think we could find like a lot of other stuff. But that's the magic of Webflow. Like, you become a bit more of a developer, doesn't matter what kind of background you come from. And you work with a little bit of SEO and marketing and development and you, what we would probably call now UX design and things like that. And eventually, by just picking up the platform, becoming sufficient in it, you become more of a dev. Doesn't matter who you are. That's one of the reasons why I hear these stories about SEOs and teams and SEO teams and marketing teams not really adopting Webflow that easily. It's because you have to understand how JSON works now. It's not going to be one-click schema markup implementation. You will need to import that code and build it and do it yourself, which is a little bit of what changes kind of with this. So that's why I say, like, with great power comes great fails, because you have to become a dev. Somewhat of a dev, doesn't matter, but a little bit. So with that being said, you had a lot of good questions that you prepared for us. Honestly, I want everybody in the comments and in the chat go nuts now and show some love and applause for Glenn, because he made preparing for the stream easiest it ever has been. He literally took the notes, wrote everything for me. I just logged in 15 minutes before the stream, and everything was done. Just put together this board. And with that being said, let's jump into one of the questions. It's your pick. You know all the questions. You pick the topic. Let's chat about it. Where you're going, because you prepared all of this. I just migrated to Figma. So
yeah, okay. Well, I think this was worth getting this one out the way, because we were just talking about it. This, when do you cross over from being a designer to being a developer? Can you call yourself a developer? All that kind of thing. I think let's just quickly get that out the way. Let's stop with that terminology, that labeling, self-limitation. Let's just remove the self-limiting beliefs, and actually just say, as you said a minute ago, we're already on that scale somewhere, being developers. So if you're comfortable, call yourself a Webflow developer. Absolutely, just go for it. It doesn't matter, as long as you're always learning and always leveling up, regardless of whether it's with me. Make sure that you're listening to people like, I've got Alex, obviously Iglesias from FinSuite. You've got Keegan, WebBay, Fame. You've got who else have we got here? We've got I wrote some other people down that are good to learn from. Timothy Ricks. These people are doing more advanced stuff with Webflow, and even if you watch this stuff and you don't fully get it, and it's like, that code stuff is like well over my head, doesn't matter. Soak it up. Let just watch, listen, let it all go in. And it's amazing how it does actually affect your knowledge overall. So that when you go to that meeting or something new comes out and you think, wow, that looks really exciting, I've got no idea how to use it. You'll edge towards something coming out and you going, oh, I think I could have a play with that. I think I could jump into that and have a play with that. So one came out today, for example, or yesterday maybe, which is called LangDoc. And it's Jonas's, who made Wiz actually originally. It's his new venture with somebody else. And it's creating plugins, allowing you to manage your plugins for ChatGPT and so on. And it's an incredible thing. But immediately you're confronted with APIs and endpoints and authentication and JSON, as you say, all these things. And it's like, well, if you don't know that stuff, you stand no chance of getting in and having a go with that. What if you did know that stuff and you could jump in and create a new app or a plugin for the marketplace? And this is such early stages that if you could do that kind of thing, you've got that first mover advantage. You're actually suddenly building stuff for other people to use and possibly making some good money from that. But even if it's just content or part of your learning journey, I just think it's so important that we all do that all the time. So that's the first one. Just get that one out of the way.
Yes. So this would mean that no code, like always, there's counterintuitive nature to everything in life. Like usually what's intuitively feels the right decision for most people isn't the actual right way to do things. And this would mean that no code in a way gave birth to everybody codes a little bit better now. This would mean that with no-code tools, no-code platforms, or just let's call it visual development as Webflow, but still, Airtable is a no-code platform, but it kind of forces you to learn just a little bit of a tiny little bit of script or something, or same with Webflow, it's a no-code tool for websites, but you get yourself into these scenarios where you have to copy some custom code from some clonable, put it to your build, and that's like the first touch points we all probably get, but it doesn't matter what kind of industry we come from. But then later it adds on that, and then you can go, as you say, to Viz, to Sano, to things like that. So this whole, it all starts by just adding a bit of script from, let's say, Search Console or Google Analytics to make it work on your site. But it might end with somewhere far, far ahead your development journey, as in just looking at code and understanding better and better what it is and kind of being able to manipulate it and enforce it better. So yeah, what would happen if you would be better dev than you are now? It doesn't matter what you do. Do you do design or marketing or whatever? What happens then if you learn more code? And I know that best SEOs or marketers I know, they were not afraid that even in more stubborn platform days. They were always a little bit understanding a little bit of CSS, a little bit of HTML, can just import a new CSS style, change the font color or whatever, even the basics, So we're kind of moving to this future where that whole joke about no code, nobody needs to use code, becomes actually counterintuitively, everybody has to know at least some code, right? Would you agree to that or not really?
Yeah, no, I do. And it plays into the next question, which is whether this is really just upskilling and adding a couple of feathers to your hat and being able to do a little bit more. And is that really what's happening here? And I disagree. I think that what's happening with all of this is you're transforming into something else. You're becoming something else. As a true no-coder that has an interest in below the surface stuff, but just below the surface, you don't have to go very deep because of the visual development paradigm around all of these tools. I think the fear of going really deep and getting into the guts of code is what puts a lot of people off. But as you do dig into, I give the example of Make, because Make has a very visual canvas, as many of you probably know, where you've got these circular nodes on a canvas, and each node does one thing. So that node is something that grabs a record from your Google Sheet, and this next node actually then transfers it to Airtable. So you've got these two different nodes, and each node is actually just an API call. It's just connecting, authenticating if it needs to, requesting certain information, and then bringing that back and moving on to the next stage. And there's not a huge amount that you need to know beyond that to actually make use of a platform like that. Just that simple kind of concept in your mind. And it hides it all from you as best it possibly can, but it also exposes it for you if you need it to. And I think that's the beauty of this, is you can kind of jump in on the visual side. And then if you want to dig a bit deeper, sometimes you just have to out of necessity, like something's gone wrong and there's an error message. And what does this error message say? It's not very descriptive, so you have to go and find out, what does that really mean, like internal server error? It's all part of the learning process. So the next bit from that is it just upskilling, or is it more than that? I think the question to ask here is, why would you want to do this in the first place? Why do you want to become a DEVsigner, or whatever we call it? Why don't we just leave those skills to the more traditional web dev type folk, because they're better at it than me, and I'll just stick to web design? And I think it's because we're at that point now where we've all got enough skills, and the life is changing, where more and more solopreneurs are coming out. Whether or not you're launching your own product, or you're teaming up with somebody else, or you're in a startup, or whatever it might be. And if you've got the ability to learn this stuff and then apply it, you can change your life. You can build something that people would pay money to use. You can support your whole family by creating a portfolio of small products. You could literally change the way you live your life and what you do with your time. And I'm not saying that to be dramatic. I think I've seen it so many times now, including myself, where you can actually not just design something and hand it to somebody else. You can actually run with it. This is your project. You can go after the bigger projects. You can charge more money. You can sell yourself as slightly differently to what you were offering before. And I think that's really powerful. And that's something that we should all be confident to want to have and pursue, and then see where you can go with that, whatever that might be to you. So I don't think it is just about adding on a few skills. It's like, could this change your life?
So you think ambition will separate those who will add another tool set, which in this case would be basics of code, or a little bit more, intermediate level of code, to kind of up their game next to the no-code tools. And you mentioned small products, so that also ambition could drive you to some more things you didn't think you can make, but now your creativity kind of bursts, even as a designer, out of that, just because now not only you can design it, but you can also actually kind of build it. Doesn't matter what it is, doesn't matter what kind of problem it solves. And small products are actually fundamentally that. It just solves a very, very annoying itch for usually a small subset of people, very niche down subset, but very, very annoying itch. So you can become creative in that way, and it can help you to elevate your career in that sense as well, right? Not only landing bigger clients, but like being able to more, have less boundaries as a designer, right? With that kind of sum it up, you think?
Yeah, you're relying on fewer people if you can do more yourself. You have more control, you have more ownership. But I think it is just more than skills. So I think it is a mindset shift. I've worked with a lot of web designers, and what I've experienced is, because I've had more of a coding background, when something more complex comes along, I'll just kind of fumble along, learn it, and get on with it, and we'll get there. Whereas a lot of designers will just stop. They'll stop themselves, and they'll say, no, that's not what I do. I don't understand that. That's outside my remit. I don't think like that. As I say, these self-limiting beliefs. So it is a mindset shift. But the amazing thing is that once you've learned this stuff, you don't have to have those anymore. You may not be amazing at it initially, but because of the way NoCode's set up, you have every chance to be as good as any other no-coder, because we're all using the same tools in the same way. And as long as you learn some important fundamentals, which will set you apart from somebody else, that app that you build will be solid, scalable, usable, enjoyable, performant, all those things. And that's part of the learning, but it shouldn't be shied away from. So that's why I say that. I think that the thing that I'm after, and I don't know whether we've got this in your Figma, but I put the word in my notes, the word freedom. How much freedom can you create for yourself? When is enough actually enough to feel truly free to design and build whatever you want? Where does that stop? Because there's a tendency to think, oh, I'm going to just have to keep learning and learning and learning for years before I get to that point. But I think it's the whole point of this course and initiative that I'm doing is that you could do it after just one course. One course and set of clonables and the community together, those three working all together in tandem. By the end of that, you will have a huge amount more confidence, and you can go and build something else quite easily because you've got the skills and you've got the confidence because you've all been doing it together. So yeah, I think that's it. And trying to do that with YouTube videos, you don't know what you're supposed to be learning. There's so much stuff out there. It's like, is this good? Is this important? Is this the way I should do it? Who do I trust? Who do I believe? And it's difficult to know, so you've got to cut through that noise, save the time, save the money, cut through the noise. Let's just crack on and get on with it. So that's my mission. And I just hope that more and more Webflow designers kind of wake up to that. Now that we've got tools like Wiz coming out for the first time ever, when you think about it, Webflow hasn't had a middleware platform, that we could actually even have a go with this stuff to build something. It hasn't existed, so it's there for the taking. And I can tell you now, there's a lot of stuff that's going to come out of FinSuite over the next year, Wiz being a key part of that. But all of their products starting to merge together, attributes, as a lot of people will have used, maybe used daily. Combining that with the power of Wiz is immense. Just those two tools coming together is already a huge thing. And they're going to be doing everything they possibly can to educate all of us and get us all leveling up with their suite of tools on offer. It's going to be. I just recommend that we all kind of get on with it now, because you're going to be ahead of the curve as it all starts coming out. So, yeah.
Oh yeah, that's true. FinSuite is definitely brewing a few things, and some of us know more or less about it. But already based on the stuff that is already there, you can know that this is something to follow. Let's jump a little bit to the comments. We have a quick moment here to acknowledge, for example, Felix is coming out as a developer. So he's saying, I'm designer first, but as far as Webflow is concerned, I would never say I'm a Webflow designer. When I'm on Webflow, I'm building for the web. Therefore, I'm Webflow developer. And that all comes down. Felix was a little bit late, but he probably still caught that we had that scale for, we're all somewhere on the scale. I'm just gonna delete. Yeah. So we're all here somewhere on the scale of, being a designer, developer, and even if we're a marketer or a website owner, still something we have to kind of get those basics out. And especially for designers, it's really important to kind of, as Glenn kind of shared, to change that mindset that you're no longer just a designer. You also have to understand some stuff. And Dan is saying, I don't know at which point you said agreed, but I was thrown into code after knowing NoCode and its limitations. And he says Airtable formulas, Notion formulas, regex, then basic CSS and Webflow HTML to basic API calls. Yeah, that's stuff, you like it or not, you're gonna be, forced to reckon with. And that's as we said, like the counter to the nature of no code. It forces you to learn how to code. or at least how to understand code. Not necessarily you have to write the code yourself, but you have to understand what you're looking at, which is, I think, in my learning curve, TheFlow was the fundamental tool to learn basics of code, and I'm still learning every day. The other week, I kind of had a dumb question. I was like, wait, how does it work? And then I had to learn it on my own, that I don't know one fundamental thing about how browsers work, and now I knew. So
one of my favorite ones there is the whole box model that is never going to go away, and Webflow's University, and then dealing with like, how do we think about padding versus spacing, etc. And it's once you use the tool, the visual tool, and then you go and look at one of those videos from the team, the education team at Webflow, it kind of all falls into place. It's like, okay, that was missing from my knowledge for like years. I didn't understand that properly for years. I've just been grabbing either one because I thought they were pretty much equivalent, and these are concepts that we develop early on if we're not taught properly or pick up on it properly. And but using no-code tools like Webflow, they teach you those concepts, really important concepts. So I totally agree with you. Yeah, it's a fascinating thing. And then Dan, you were saying about the things like that's the basics of CSS and HTML. And then when you get to them making basic API calls where you're maybe using something like Logic, and it's saying to you, okay, come on, we're now giving you quite a powerful tool here. Where are you going to send this form contents to, or how are you going to go and save this in Airtable or Google Sheets? It's like, crap, I have no idea. So you're suddenly like having to level up and learn that, because otherwise Logic is pretty useless to you unless you're just storing stuff in collections. So Dan, anything like that, I'm happy to help out.
Well, I had to unmute myself. Sorry, I almost started talking. Just the habit I'm trying to form. Moving forward with our topic, so let's chat a bit about when do you actually need a developer only, designer only, or when is DEVsigner enough? Assuming that this DEVsigner knows how to design and how to use it on Webflow. And to jump into this, I want to share like a quick story that some of you probably already heard. For those who haven't, so when we were talking about freedom of not needing a developer, I had this experience working with one team that has a lot of different smaller SaaS products, and they have like a few UX designers, and we were building site after site for multiple projects with them together. And what happened was UX designers, or just designers, let's say, those who learned Webflow felt so much freedom about it that they were like, oh, I don't need to now push this to a developer for them to develop. We can just test things and try it out and do. But yes, that required like that grit, that grinding thing of I'm gonna learn this no matter what. And in the end, we kind of, after 3 sites, rebuilt completely, and there was like a few 100-page sites per each SaaS product. We came up with this weird angle when you don't have a developer, but you have a designer that can develop. So that's kind of we would plan first the build in Figma, and we would plan a lot of things, but we use Reloom components for that, and we would kind of plan the whole build as a wireframe, lo-fi build, no fancy stuff, just the architecture itself, just the information infrastructure, just the sitemap, just the SEO needs and all that stuff. And then we would develop it on Webflow, because we all been there. Oh, there's going to be a slider here. And then you start working on it in Webflow. It's like, yeah, no way. We're just going to scrap it for a simpler approach for the same thing. And only after we would have a completely workable wireframe migrated to Webflow, only then we would actually start designing on top. So we would have this, just because of the style guide, we would have like a mid-fidelity build that is already operational, and only then we would start thinking, okay, so we proved the concept, we proved this for SEO, we proved the that like 7 or 12 CMSs together are working the way we want it to work. They're all spinning in this content kind of thing. And then only after that, you would start taking each section one by one and designing it in Figma, and then migrating that design on top of existing build. So with that being said, this story kind of always encourages me to kind of remember that sometimes you have to put things with TheFlow outside of the box and think about them different perspective. And sometimes you're going to find that the way things work not necessarily will work for each team or you, but that's way we kind of worked. That allowed us to not invest too much time into mistakes and test them before kind of spending time on actually solving problems. So coming back to that, when is developer needed, when is designer needed, when is a mix of some sort of weird parameters is needed? Like, any thoughts on this? And
yeah. So I put a tweet out the other day about versatility to do with this particular subject, because having done agency work and freelance work and all the rest of it, and the client at least will always go for the Webflow person that has more about them, even if it costs them more, because the communication that goes on, even when there's just one extra person in the mix, is so much more to deal with that it's just creating friction for no. So if you've got that Webflow person you're describing who has those development skills or more skills, they're going to go with you. You're going to get the job because you can say, I know about SEO, I know about databases and APIs and things like this. Even if you don't have to use them on the project, they're still going to, there's almost like an element of more trust associated with that. You're more knowledgeable, which I find, funny, but it's true. And then if you do get called upon to use those skills, obviously you better make sure you know them. But you're there, you're already there. You don't need to go and find a developer suddenly, or bring in somebody from the outside who's just going to disrupt the whole dynamic of the project that's been going on for the past 4 weeks or whatever it might be. And even just finding a Webflow developer who's available can sometimes be really difficult. So yeah, I think that's the key I would say there is you may only need to design on a project and build that out in Webflow, and that's sufficient. But I haven't been on many projects where you don't have to build something extra into the mix, whether it's a feature or a third-party JavaScript tag, an external sort of add-on of some kind, or obviously your interactions or whatever it might be. Very few Webflow projects are just as simple as a brochure-ware site, basically, these days. Even form handling. I mean, it's a basic thing that can still be done in a myriad of ways, and some Webflow designers don't know where to start. A client may say halfway through the project, "Oh, we didn't mention, but actually all of these inquiries need to go straight into our MailChimp list," or something like that. Or we need to add a live chat component on, but we want to make sure that the live chat works in conjunction with the CRM that we have. It's a bit of a curveball. So it's good to be prepared for that and actually be ready to deal with those kinds of situations. And then if you do deal with them well, you've then got a kind of a job for life, whether you want to retain them with that client or they just keep coming back to you for iterations in the future. You're their go-to person. And I think there's a lot to be said for that. If you're looking to be in the freelancer or agency game, is to always be the person they want to come back to, not just get this current job done. So I'm not sure whether that's answering the question of when is a designer enough versus a developer, but that's my take on it.
Interesting. Oh, 1 sec. Okay, yeah, still finding the software sometimes. So interesting take on that whole being the trustee and that people will cut communication time as opposed to kind of quality, because best projects I know were always built by quite a few professionals working together. but also quite a few professionals. So the whole team making sacrifices to their craft because of some other professional like asking them to, this has to be this way. So for example, I'm telling designers that we have to cut these components and add this insane amount of internal linking links on the page or something, and then vice versa, me cutting the amount of content we're going to put here just so design looks better, and then the developer also adding some script. So it's always like that kind of balance. That's as Glenn kind of you spotted this that actually clients want simplicity. So this is two different types of client coming in. Would you say like there are different types of client types and business sizes that would come to like designer that can develop, so DEVsigner, as opposed of just coming to multiple professionals and getting your Figma design from there and development this guy, and then SEO is done on top by these guys, and then we're gonna put some marketing, another campaign from these people. Like, would you, from your experience, see that there are different types maybe of clients that might be chasing different things?
Yes, obviously. I think it generally comes down to budget. So if you've got a big project with a big budget, the general belief from a client that I've experienced anyway will think that they will get better value if they, not better value, they'll get more quality if they bring in more players. So the specialist SEO, the specialist designer, the specialist developer. I'm not sure about that necessarily. I know no one person can know everything. I mean, that's impossible. That's too much. So especially something like SEO, if you could be the best Webflow designer in the world, but you may not have even some of the more fundamental grasps of good SEO, partly because of the fact that you just can't keep up with the changes that are going on. So algorithm changes, and you're not necessarily following all of that. And so you could be link stuffing, and actually Google's currently saying we're going to penalize you for that at the moment. You just don't know. So I think there's always going to be a place for specialist agencies. I think SEO is one of those specialisms, and it's why you exist, obviously, and that's a good thing. I think we need specialists out there making sure that these projects go in the right direction, whether that's just consultancy or working hand in hand with the Webflow designer / DEVsigner. But when it comes to the actual build, again, I think it's down to, well, if you have an appreciation as the Webflow designer as to what constitutes best practices from a development point of view, then the project's going to be more successful. So it could be something even as simple as, let's say you've got user authentication in the mix, and you've got a situation on the site where you show one thing to somebody who signed in and the other something else to somebody who's not signed in. What do you do in situations where the person was signed in and they've walked away from their desk for 2 days and they come back and refresh their screen? What happens then? What are these edge cases? How do we handle different scenarios? And you've just got to learn this stuff. It's good to learn this stuff so you can actually design the experience to match what the customer expects and what the client needs to happen. You have to make sure we don't show them something after a certain period of time, or it could be anything. So yeah, I think again, back to that thing of almost being like a generalist, of like a Webflow generalist, where if you've got a certain amount of development concepts in your tool belt, that will make you a better designer as well.
Making a car for you. Here you go. This is your screenshot. This is the outcome of this whole thing, and I'm screenshotting this and throwing it into Twitter. And now we can come back to double view. It kind of pretty sums up our chat today in general, and the idea we had. Would you think that this would mean that some designers can design in Webflow directly, for example? Like, because there's a more and more movement showing up of just designing code directly. Don't waste time on you can sketch on paper, but then why would you do the same thing again in Figma or something like that? There is this, and I remember his name is Yosef, at YS at Twitter, and he's kind of an advocate of that. I looked it up, his tweet right now, and I remember this was a very heated discussion. He deleted it in the end. And also some designers that are so just Figma, no, I'm not going to learn even a line of code, even went as far as booking his whole calendar for the next 3 months and things like that, every possible second and minute. So we're in this kind of weird space now, the way I would see it, where there are alternative opinions forming on this. What does it mean to be a designer, And we're not talking about like university level where you learn your basic skills or things like that, because they will always be late by at least 7 years if they're lucky, right? But like overall, would you say, because what you're explaining kind of forces me to think that if you're already thinking about things, for example, what happens if I refresh this after 2 days and things like that, this kind of separates your job a little bit from doing that creative thing, but doing creatively functional. Like immediately my creative workflow is functioning. It's already works. This can be tested. You don't like the font color or how many pixels or rems the rounded corners are. Here you go. I changed this everywhere now. Change. So this kind of approach of more organic, our agency says websites are never done. But is it true as well if you migrate your mindset from designer to DEVsigner, as in the design is never done? It's just a functioning organism that I'm creating, so might as well I start with code. Like, what are your thoughts on all this? Is kind of designing code in the future, or some of us can move there, or none of us should do that? It's still a separate creative process. Like, what do you think?
I'm completely dedicated to avoiding code. For a start, I think if because the no-code movement is so powerful and it's just a juggernaut that's just improving every day, then especially when you've got supportive technologies like AI, we should certainly not. I don't think we should be looking to learn code. There may come a point in your life where that becomes necessary or useful, but really, I think even just a basic level of JavaScript is probably enough to get you through the rest of your career these days. That's the first thing about code. But I think just getting to the point where you can jump into Webflow, build rapidly, or design and build rapidly, iterate rapidly, and not rely on things like Figma or even paper. I think we're a way off from that yet, even with frameworks. I mean, I use Relium a lot. I'm using it on the course to the point where actually I'm not even going to create a design beyond the pretty vanilla components that Relium gives you on purpose, because it's not a design course. It's more about features and no-code development. So I kind of want to avoid design, but how handy is it to actually have these really great looking functional components to just bring in really quickly and then do the dev work on top of that? So why would I build those from scratch? That doesn't make sense. Also, if you see the kind of sites that are built on top of these frameworks, especially Relium, where you get like the whole battles, where the design battles and things, and just two completely different designs come out of a particular set of components. I think that's pretty incredible. So what I think that's showing is that the designer's imagination should always be allowed to be flexed to 100%. They should never be restricted to be able to do that. And that's what we're after with this whole new movement, I think, with DEVsigning. It's like, how can we still design the interface and the experience the way we want it to be without compromise? And as I said in this earlier today, the WISD component of all of that, the layer in all of that, is giving you that 100%. So that's what we're ultimately after. Whether or not you prototype in Figma beforehand or you just go straight into Webflow, I think that's always going to be a personal preference. Yeah, I think it's funny how it becomes a heated debate. I don't think there is a right or wrong way of doing it. It's just what works for you. But flexibility is the key, not right or wrong.
Yeah, there's always two ways: the my way and the wrong one, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So yeah, if anybody has any questions to Glenn, we're gonna be wrapping up today. It was awesome chatting about this. I think this could go on for another time with a more specific knife cut into some specific topics, but I really enjoyed to meet somebody that clearly had similar ideas about this whole what it means to be developer, designer, overall web person in this day and age, especially when Webflow is kind of changing the game so much, and we're seeing this. And it's really fun to kind of rethink not only the dictionary that we're using, but at the same time, like the titles that we give people, and at the same time, your own, what's kind of I found from this discussion that we had for almost an hour was that, and what Felix shared, and everybody else kind of ran with the same vibe, was that changing phrasing inside your head sometimes can be the best outcome out of this, like understanding that, hey, I'm a developer, therefore, and that kind of changes neuron connections inside your head saying, so you should probably know a little bit of development. It's like, yeah, I should probably. And then if you don't, then you feel like, oh, I'm a bad developer. And there's where you start, So sucking at something is usually the first step at being kind of good at something. So accepting that you suck at code, but you're still a developer that sucks at code could be like a good step for many people, especially when now, as you said, like it's not about learning to code. AI soon will code for us. It's about kind of moving towards that, new world where we have to point fingers, we have to come up with ideas, and we have to find ways to build it. Doesn't matter where we take Reloom components from somewhere, put it together, change some colors, swap some swatches, do things. Okay, so it's already there. Then we add some custom code from ChatGPT. Then we do this, then we do that. Then we connect it to this, then we connect it to Xano, and bam, bam, bam. Soon, 1 weekend later, with Glenn's new course and community, you have yourself a marketplace platform, and you can be selling something, right? Isn't the whole idea and goal of this, right?
Yeah, exactly. Well, you'll see in the original launch tweet that I put out there, I had the screenshot of Neo on the roof of the skyscraper with Morpheus telling him he's just got to let it all go, let his mind go and just take the leap. And I thought that was really pertinent because that's exactly, I think, the feeling that we should have with this is free your mind. Don't have restrictions in place. Go and learn this by yourself, by all means, but just learn it. Let's all make sure we're doing ourselves justice by doing it in some way, because it's all going to change pretty soon. The Webflow landscape over the next year is, I think, going to be quite a different one. So yeah, let's all be prepared.
And thanks, Aruna. Aruna is saying, thanks, Glenn. Very interesting insights. Thanks, Aruna, for watching the whole time. Yeah, really excited to see the future of this. So you really think Webflow is going bonkers and this is going to change a lot, and we just have an upper hand because we've been in the community for so long. So our learning curve starts from what's new going to be added, as opposed of somebody else's learning curve starts from zero. Does that the message you bring here?
Yeah, I think so. And just imagine if you were new to all of this and you were sat and you've got Bubble over here and you've got Webflow and Wiz kind of over here, and you need to gravitate towards one or the other, and you've got a very strong design oriented mind, and you've maybe done some web design before, and you hop into both and you have a play with both. I don't know, most people will say, Webflow makes a lot more sense. It just does what you kind of think it should do. Bubble's just not there yet in terms of its sort of design capability. So I just think that don't restrict yourself. Give yourself everything and every chance to do it all. Yeah.
By the way, check your DMs afterwards. Dan already DM'd, so I think you have another founding member next to Omkar, that's for sure. And then another thing, while we touched it before we leave, Felix is asking, so what do you think the landscape will be like? You think it's gonna change? And you sound quite confident in that. Like, let's daydream for the last 5 minutes.
Let's do it. Well, first of all, thanks, Dan. I'll talk to your DM. Felix, okay. When they mentioned DevLink it was really understated, and yet the imagine. I think that was the bit where everybody kind of went a bit wild. It was almost like an afterthought, and yet everybody was like, "Wow, this is incredible! This is changing the game. This is meaning that we can." Work as a team finally, and everybody can do their thing, and I think that's going to be a big one. And then off the back of that, you're going to have obviously the marketplace apps, or components. Some of those will be free, some of those will be paid, I'm sure. That whole ecosystem has yet to blossom. Shopify's app store is probably one of the most important reasons why they have grown as big as they've grown today. It's huge. It's a massive thing for them. So that extensibility on top of Webflow, if it does come out over the next year, which is what they've suggested, again, you can't even imagine what that's going to mean, especially when you start combining things like AI. So if you've got apps that are coming into the Webflow marketplace, and those apps are automatically created to large language models, and you can train those models with your own data, and you can just build these apps at the click of a mouse, and it's all your design. So it's a beautiful looking app, and it's fully responsive and all the rest of it, and yet it does all of this really amazing magic stuff. I mean, I just can't imagine what we're going to be building within a year with all of this going on all at the same time. This is all happening at the same time. The Wiz marketplace as well is going to be there. You're going to be able to buy clonables in Wiz. It's just all converging, and you get that. I get that sense. I don't know about you guys, but you get that sense that there's a sort of like a squeezing of all of these really big ideas into a point of convergence, which is daunting if you let it, but it's also really exciting if you let it as well. So it's like, well, what can I do with this? I want to be part of this. This is a big shift. And I don't have to go and jump ship and learn WeWeb. I can stick right where I am, carry on, double down, and invest in yourself, and invest everything you've done so far. Continue that investment, compound on that investment. Don't throw it away. I think that's one of the messages that I'm not seeing enough on socials. It's like people saying, I'm going to have a look at Framer. It looks awesome. I'm like, yeah, of course it looks awesome. It's the new thing and it's great, but you've got to start again. Do you really want to start again? Webflow, it's going to get bigger and better. It's stick with it.
Stick with it. Yeah, two different logics. So that would mean, like, based on what we spoke today, that if DevLink gets introduced and DEVsigner becomes even more important term, because then not working in DevLink, but working in TheFlow designer, as in the interface, makes what will be requested from designers, because then it will be separated. The development will move to DevLink, right? And that would mean that the actual TheFlow developer in the title would mean that you can operate some heavy machinery under the hood, and that the designer would be just required understanding, basic time to kind of, basic code, basic stuff, how it's going to be presented, how it's going to be shown, how this is going to work. And so that would kind of change the landscape, and our terminology becomes even more alive in that sense, as in if you're a designer that can only work in Figma, well, in the TheFlow ecosystem, you kind of don't fit the picture, because then somebody else has to redesign your ideas into actual code. So that could be like an also interesting part, because as you said, this explosion actually happens, and we touch that point where the marketplace actually opens up the way it should. The connection to other software, actually the backend opens up for the community, and the community is already standing behind the door for years, and some of like FinSuite is already broke through the door and through the window 7 times and not even asking the permission. So when that happens, and that inception point, like that inception kind of jumps out of the and blows out of proportion, being a designer that knows that their websites that they design have been built with Webflow, and I designed for Webflow, but I never actually would be able to develop this on my own. It kind of leaves you at a disadvantage in this new frontier that we kind of touch, and Felix is saying the same thing. Like, it sounds exciting. We're all hope. The whole Webflow community is driven on hope, and we really hope that hope game that we've been playing for years, not a decade, but like a solid half a decade, eventually we will not be needed to be driven by hope, and that point is like soon, right?
I think so. I was just thinking, just one last point about DevLink, by the way, as you were talking there. It's tempting to think that DevLink approach would be going back to that traditional model of designer and developer. I'm thinking not. I'm thinking that just because the two are separated from each other, you could still be doing both. So you could still be doing the dev bit over here without hand coding. I mean, don't forget, with AI and code completion and Replit and all of these things now, you could still ask an AI to build that code for you, plug that into the dev bit of the DevLink, you do the design and the design. So you could still be doing both. And I don't think Webflow has suggested that it has to be a developer, a traditional developer that sits and writes code by hand, that is the only one that will be able to use DevLink in that way. I think, again, we should be open-minded and say to ourselves, maybe I could do both. That would be amazing. It's just that you get to separate your concerns, as they say. You've got the design over here, you got the clever stuff over here, and you can blend those two together, which is kind of what Wiz does as well. So yeah, watch this space. But my faith hasn't wavered that much in Webflow over the years. I think that it is just a waiting game, and it's been a bit slow in the coming. But they've had a huge architectural change to go through, which they've now emerged from. And I think we've started to see much more rapid releases of things recently. The smaller ones, but hopefully the bigger ones will be coming soon as well.
Yeah, we're all hoping a lot of things, but at the same time, I think the community is ready for this, and I think they're almost ready, which can be sensed in certain things, and certain staff changes, and certain releases, and rapid quality of life updates, and yeah, we're almost there, and hope is a thing that kind of depletes, but at the same time, it's enough things to see that it might be sooner than later, rather than what we are used to this point, later. All right, guys. All right, Dan. All right. Thanks, Glenn, a lot for joining us. Thanks, Felix, Dan, Omkar, Aruna, and everybody else who was here throughout the stream. We're going to leave you with this one message. Change your title inside your head, and maybe going to be easier. DM Glenn on Twitter. Wait, let me find the details again. Where was it? So yeah, so just DM Glenn at Twitter. Join the Webflow plus Biz plus Sano courses and community, and you're gonna get clonables from that. And there's still some founding member spaces for those who want to join those seats. And any last words before we end the stream? Any last topics, ideas, or anything you want to share on top of that?
No, just to say thank you to everybody for listening, and I hope it was useful. There's no big hard sell pressure from me on the course. If you just want to chat, just chat over DM. As I said before earlier, if you missed it, I only want it to be for people who really need it and want it. So I'm not going to pressure anybody, but happy to chat about it if you need more information. So yeah, meet you soon.
Thanks, everybody. See you next week. And just know that you can do both. So be not only a designer or not only a developer. If you're a developer, learn some design. If you're a designer, learn some development. The future is here, and in the future, you have to do a lot of things to get by. So become a DEVsigner. Thanks a lot for joining us. Thanks, Glenn. Thanks, everybody. And see you next week. Bye, guys.
Bye, bro.
And